As usual, it's been a very active off-season for the Toronto Maple Leafs. David Morassutti is here to talk about that, plus the latest updates on the rookie tournament and some injuries. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Leafs, David Morassutti. And David, never a dull moment for the Leafs, even in the offseason, even in rookie camp. Let's start off with Nick Robertson. He signs finally on the dotted line, but still a lot of rumors that he may not be on the roster when the season starts. What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a tough situation for Nick Robertson because, during his, last few years here, his development has kind of taken a bit of a wrong turn for him, right? Once viewed as like one of the top prospects in this team system, he's struggled to stay healthy, struggled to produce, also in a way struggled to really grasp a full-time role of what he's supposed to do to stay in the NHL, right? Last year plays very well, gets demoted, not because of play, but because of salary cap reasons. Very demoralizing in a lot of ways for a player who, felt he was really establishing himself, then having to take a bit of a step backwards for reasons that are beyond his control. So he signs the deal. We all know that there was the request for him to be traded. And I think that had more to do with he just wanted find a place where he can get a fresh start, right? And get maybe a renewed opportunity. But the problem is, there wasn't really a deal out there, right? Like, if there was a deal that made sense for the Leafs to do it for Nick Robertson wouldn't be on the Leafs right now. And I think eventually someone got to tell him, like, take the 1-year deal, bet on yourself, whether that's go through camp, show you can do something, and maybe a team then takes a chance and wants to trade for you. Or the Leafs have abundance of opportunity right now to play and to be a regular contributor in this lineup. But at the same time, it's up to the player to make the decision hard on the coach. And it also helps that there's a new coach in town who will have his own opinion on Nick Robertson when he goes into training camp. So when the new coach's approval, that's, I think, the best case scenario for him right now.
And, the Leafs also adding Max Pacioretty on a PTO. What do you think the odds are that he sticks with the team? And if he does, what role would he play?
I think the big part here, obviously, everyone says, is his health. If Pacioretty gets through camp healthy, I think, it's almost like said that he is going to be on the team, right? The agent pretty much, as soon as the PTO is signed, there's a deal on the table as long as he gets through camp. And like the Leafs went through a lot to ensure that he was ready for this opportunity, right? They made him do some testing on the ice, show that what his skating is like. He went above and beyond. And I listened to an interview that he did actually on the show his agent hosts, and basically talking about how he's really taken his fitness very seriously the last few years. Like, this is a player who's rehabbed a lot through injuries and hasn't really been able to train. So I think, and a lot of people may not understand the difference, really, like not being able to get on the ice and doing the work that you want to do in your offseason program. I think that's really hurt Max Pacioretty. I think that's only going to help him, go into this season. And look, the Leafs do not have a lot of options on left wing. And I know that people are like, well, you're not going to get the Max Pacioretty that scored 30 goals years ago. I said, but the Leafs don't need a Max Pacioretty that scores 30 goals. They need a Max Pacioretty that could come in and produce lower in the lineup. The fourth line has been so brutal at providing offense for this team. Having a Max Pacioretty there, I think, is going to just help spread things out when it comes to the scoring. Now, there is some competition. I don't think there's ever really a guarantee. No GM's going to give a guarantee on a PTO, but Pacioretty, given his years of experience, I think it's almost safe to say that as long as he gets through camp healthy, he'll be on the Leafs start the season.
Now, this past weekend, rookie tournaments all over the league, the Leafs participating, and yet some injury scares going on over the course of the weekend. Why don't you fill us in on who got injured and what the prognosis is as far as you know?
Yeah, even before the tournament started, Van Danford, their top pick from this year's draft, a lot of people were excited to see what he can do. He was hurt in a scrimmage. You know, that was a tough one. He got hit along the boards and then calling it a upper body, I think, head injury. And again, that's tough, you know, not being able to see one of your top prospects on the ice there. So that was a kind of the first blow. And then Fraser Minton, who I think was having a standout performance, you know, in this tournament, he suffers an injury. They took him out for precautionary reasons. Obviously, that's never good to see a player leave a game. But I think, you know, in a tournament like this where it's just a showcase for these players, don't put your players in a position to hurt or get hurt more than maybe they need to be. So the Minton one, I think, will hurt a little bit more because that's a player right there that the Leafs want to have take a spot when the season opens, right? There's a gaping hole at third line center. He actually won the job out of camp last year, but I think that felt more like Sheldon Keefe didn't like the options and went with the Fraser Minton, and maybe he wasn't ready for it. This year, another year of juniors, another year where he really showed maturity in his game. And look, in that prospect tournament, what I was seeing, I saw a lot of similar things, but I just saw a more confident approach from Fraser Minton. I said, this is a guy I could see playing third line center. Again, prospect tournament, you have to take all those with a bit of a grain of salt because of the competition, but he excelled, right? When a player like that excels, you get a little excited about that.
No doubt. Anyone else stand out in the tournament or any potential young breakout players for the Leafs in camp this year? I know it's a veteran team. It
is a veteran team, and especially that's been like the big thing that's been talked about lately are the Leafs now having too many veterans. They look at the guys they added this summer, right? Chris Tanev, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Then you can add Max Pacioretty to that list. That's three guys over the age of 30, right? No, that's the Leafs. I feel like they do need to rely on some of their younger talent. So two guys, and I've been waiting for these guys to really see if they can maybe be an option during camp. Now, they had really good tournaments here. That's Topi Niemela and Roni Hirvonen. Two of like their big Finnish draft picks from years ago under Kyle Dubas that first he was waiting for them to come from Finland to North America. Then they come here and we haven't heard much about them. You know, they've done really good things overseas, World Juniors and things like that. But with the Marlies, they were it was a bit quiet on their front. Those two are players I think I'm looking at to see if they can have a bit of a breakout in camp, because whether it's injury or just even competition, I want to see one of those two guys push for a spot in camp because the Leafs do need to get younger. And there's going to be a bit of a salary cap crunch with this team. I know they're not too bad like as in years past, but there might be a trade or two that'll have to happen to make this team salary cap compliant. And one of these guys, if they make the team out of camp, that makes that salary cap crunch just a bit easier.
No doubt about that. David, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find the podcast where you get your podcast from. Also, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, Locked On Leafs. Follow us on X at Locked On Leafs. And you can follow myself, D_Morassutti, 2 S's, 2 T's on X.
All right. David, thank you so much.
Thank you, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. You've heard us talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. In the meantime, you can check out all the great odds at FanDuel, whether it's college football, professional football. Hey, hockey fans, take a look at hockey futures. The season is just around the corner. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com. Check it out today.